Welcome back to Carib 21, where we share what's trending in and around the Caribbean. If it's your first time joining us, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Today, I'm just going to jump right into it. So Candace Owens went berserk last week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, when she decided to dumpster dive to get information on Kamala Harris's Jamaican ancestry. So I did some research myself, and I'm going to get into the truth and the lies about everything that Candace Owens unfolded last week. Let's talk about it.
Well, where should we begin? You guys have heard of whitewashing history, but have you heard of blackwashing? Blackwashing is when you're a politician and it's election season and suddenly you have to relate to black people. So you just sort of start making stuff up to blackify yourself, your history. You start dropping a bunch of slang and colloquialisms and hoping that the people will therefore understand you. Honestly, it's become something of a democratic rite of passage. Except this time, I think we may have caught the culprit red-handed. Of course, I'm speaking about Kamala Harris. I think her and her campaign team are really going to regret the day that their media henchmen came for Janet Jackson. Welcome back to Candace.
So I think it's important to note that this whole controversy started because of a recent interview that Janet Jackson did with The Guardian in the UK, where they asked her about the USA presidential race and what's her thought about the first black female president of the USA. And in that interview, Janet Jackson stated that she don't know, she's not following it as much. And she heard that the vice president, Kamala Harris, that her dad was white. And that's where all the controversy started. And it went to a different level when programs like The View started like dragging Janet Jackson, in the mud, talking about Michael Jackson. And we know like people like D.L. Hughley, just messy on the internet with Janet Jackson. So Candace Owens took this personal and decided to dumpster dive and look for Kamala Harris's ancestry in Jamaica. One thing I must say, that she went deep. However, she went online, and I think it's important to note that most of the information that are online, that you'll find online about anyone from Jamaica ancestry, take it with a grain of salt. It's not 100% valid. There are people can just go in and put in information online when it comes on to Jamaica, because Jamaica is not known for keeping good records. However, because I'm Jamaican, I was able to go online, and I was also able to pull some strings in Jamaica to get some information on the ancestry of Kamala Harris. And it's mind-blowing, very mind-blowing. So Oscar Harris, which is the grandfather of Kamala Harris, his ancestry go back, I traced the ancestry going back to as far back as 1825. And his ancestry go back to being slave owners. And as one of her claim in the video that she made, that they receive money for their slaves. So I trace his dad back to 1825, the ancestry, and it was apparent, it was evident that they were slave owners. And also, when it comes on to Donald Harris's mom, I trace her ancestry back, and apparently they were slaves. So this is going to be very fascinating. So slave and slave owners, and that's the ancestry that she comes from. So we're going to watch some more about what Candace Owens have to say, and I will break it down to you when we get back.
I'm literally buzzing with excitement right now for what we just discovered. Obviously, we are running a little bit late today, but as I said, it will be well worth the wait. So yesterday, we were getting closer and closer, asking questions, obviously, about Kamala's genealogy. If you need to go back, you can do that. Begin with episode 70 and work your way forward to see how this mystery has unfolded. So we were left with some major holes in Kamala's genealogy. We had from her father, Donald J. Harris, that he grew up in Jamaica and was raised by his grandmother, Miss Iris. He effectively wrote an entire piece about his Jamaican heritage and really focused on his grandmother. Like, she is the person that made the most difference for him. He honorably mentioned Miss Iris's husband, who he only referred to as Mr. Christie, and remained conspicuously silent about his own mother. How do you do that? How do you just say one sentence about your mother, refer to her as Miss Beryl? And I want to be clear, you're writing this for the population, right? You're talking about your heritage. Even if you called your mother Miss Beryl, you would probably, for the sake of wanting people to be clear on who you're referring to, list her full name. He didn't do that. He just said one sentence. This is not to, ignore my mother, Miss Beryl. And that was it. And we know that her full name, according to her birth certificate, is Beryl Magdalene Finnegan. And we know that at various times she took on the middle name Christie.
Okay, guys, so this is where it starts to get interesting. When you look at the screen now from the right to left, you will see Beryl Finnegan. Beryl Finnegan is the mother of Donald Harris and the grandmother of Kamala Harris. And to her left, you'll see Iris Finnegan, and that is the grandmother of Donald Harris and the great grandmother of Kamala Harris. And as a Jamaican, when you look at these pictures, you can clearly see that they are of mixed race with Indian, because most people don't realize that Jamaica out of many one people, or motto, out of many one people, came from way back in right after the abolition of slavery, when indigenous servants came to Jamaica from India and from China. So a lot of Jamaicans are mixed with African and Indian ancestry also. So you can clearly see that there's a mixture there. And when you look to the left, you'll see Patrick Finnegan. Patrick Finnegan was born in 1882 in St. Anne. And I want you to remember St. Anne. That is very important to what we're talking about. And he got married in 1908 to Iris Finnegan and the daughter. They had 5 kids together, and one of the girl was Beryl Finnegan. So it's very important. And what is important about the parish is that the parish of St. Anne is where one of the plantation was that ties this family directly to the Harris family, because the Harris family operated one of the biggest plantation in St. Anne at that time. And Patrick, on the documents that I found, was listed as a planter, someone that was working in the field at the time. After the abolition of slavery, he was working along with that family. So that is very important to know. Patrick Finnegan, the father of Beryl Finnegan Harris and the husband of Iris Finnegan, we know that he was born in St. Anne. He was born in 1882. We know that they got married. Patrick Finnegan and Iris Finnegan got married in 1908. We know that they have 5 kids together, 3 boys, 2 girls. We know that his occupation was a planter. That means he was working on one of the plantations. And we know that based on this, they were Patrick Finnegan and Iris Finnegan, the grandparents of, or great-grandparents of Kamala Harris. They were tied to the Harris plantation in St. Anne. So that much we know. Okay, so let's continue to watch what Candace Owens have been breaking down for the past 3 days and see what she come up with next.
He also mentioned in that piece that his father was Mass Oscar. I guess, again, that is kind of a slang way of referring to his father. But I was completely stumped. I was completely stumped as I was looking further into this because I could not find a marriage record between his father, Oscar Joseph Harris, Miss Oscar, and his mother, Beryl Finnegan. Like, this is something that to me seemed really odd. And some people who wanted to rationalize it were saying, oh, no, that's just how things were. And sometimes people didn't have record. No, I wasn't buying any of that because we were dealing with a family that had money. It is just a fact.
So let me step in again to explain that part of it. Mass Oscar. So Mass Oscar, it's a term that was widely used back in the days in Jamaica, especially in rural farming area. So like growing up as a child, when I would go to places like St. Mary and you would have your grandfather and friends that's going to not the plantation at the time, but they're going farming. So for example, like my grandfather was like James. So like you would hear people say, yo, Mass James, you know. So it was like a term of respect, like for elder man that was going into the field. And I think it comes from like, it has something to do with history of slavery and plantation, but we grew up in Jamaica, especially when you go to the country, Mass James, like Mr. Mass. So that is a term of respect. So Mass Oscar would be like, you know, an elderly person that would have been like in farming or something like that. So it's widely used in those areas. And then to point out that the whole marriage certificate thing, I'm not sure if Oscar and Beryl was even married. So that is another thing. They might not have been married. It might be a situation where she was working on the farm, and we know with the history of Jamaica and plantations and where their extramarital relationship or relations that goes on with outside of marriage. So that might have been one of them, or they possibly could have been married, but the record would not be online. A lot of the records that we see online now are not posted by Jamaica, by the Jamaican government or the offices of the Jamaica government, but it's posted by individual family members that are uploading stuff to like Ancestry.com. So I think it's important to mention those two. Let's get back to it.
That Kamala Harris's family descends from slavers. They were given money for their slaves. Somebody did the calculation. Essentially, for that day and time, it would have been $11 million that they inherited for their slaves once it was abolished. It is why when he speaks about his Jamaican heritage, he speaks about them as having owned stores, right? So this is not your typical Black story that we're referring to here.
Candace Owens said a lot here, in particular about the wealth of the Harris family. So let me break it down. That might be true in some sense, but what she stated about the approximately like $11 million that would have been paid for the slaves, you would have to go back because slavery was abolished in Jamaica in 1834. And as I said, I track the family, the Harris family, back to 1825. So the Harris family that would have gotten paid out for their slaves back in 1834, that would have been over 100 years leading up to this family. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the Harris family in the because, okay, so let me explain. So Oscar Harris, which is Donald Harris' dad, was born in 1914. So 1914, that's over 90 years since the abolition of slavery. And so that would have been a 90 years since the money would have been paid out for the abolition of slavery in 1835. It would be about 80 something years if my math is correct. So the family in 1914, even though they had plantation, you could say that they are wealthy. But interestingly, Oscar Joseph Harris would have been considered to be a bastard child, because he's the first Harris in Jamaica that was mixed. You can clearly see in his picture that he's of mixed race. So this is pretty much a speculation. So it seemed that one of the Harris brothers would have had a relationship with one of the woman that was working on the plantation, and that's how Oscar Joseph Harris came about. Because you can see clearly that he's mixed, and when you go back to his dad, which his dad is Joseph Alexander Harris, he was clearly not mixed. So the first mixing of the Harris family took place with Oscar Joseph Harris when he was born in 1914. So yes, they were rich, but not necessarily the same way. And with Oscar Joseph Harris, as a bastard child, probably would not have had the same privilege as if he had brothers and sisters who were from a white family and not necessarily a mixed family. So just to clear that up. Okay, and to clear up another thing about the marriage of Oscar Joseph Harris, that is Donald Harris' dad, and Beryl Finnegan, his mom. I think this is just speculation, but I think it's clear to say that they weren't married. Because Candace said she's searching for marriage certificate. I doubt you'd find a marriage certificate online, because as I said, the Jamaica system, they're not just going to put up those stuff online. So most of the information that we see from the Harris family, I think it's clear that those information were online because of the British system. The British system before Jamaica gained independence in 1963, most of the record keeping was kept by the British government. The British government keep impeccable record, so they would have record of everything Jamaica up until 1962. So anything after 1962 where the Jamaica government would be keeping record, you would have to go to Jamaica to find those records. And I don't think those records would be online. So I think it's clear to say that the marriage between, there would not have been a marriage between Beryl Finnegan and Oscar J. Harris. So that's why when you see Candace breaking it down that you see that they were married to different people, I think it's clear that they weren't married. Because, for example, like Oscar Joseph Harris, his parent clearly could not have been married, because in 1914, a white person, that owner of a plantation, would never be able to get married to a black person who's the descendants of slave, and at that time someone working on the farm. That would not have happened. So with Oscar Joseph Harris now as a mixed race, and as I said, it's clear that it came out of his dad, Joseph Alexander Harris, having relations with one of the workers, and they would not have been married. So I think it's clear to say that they weren't married. It's a bit confusing because it's just a bunch of information back and forth. But I don't think that Donald Harris' mom and dad were married. That's why you can't find those information anywhere online, and that's why it seems a bit confusing. Okay, so on the screen you're now seeing the Harris family, and from left to right you're seeing Oscar Harris. That is the father of Donald Harris and the grandfather of Kamala Harris. And as you can see there, he's clearly mixed. And as I said earlier, he is the first mixed Harris that we have come across when we're doing our research. And then next to him, you see Joseph Harris. Joseph Harris would be his dad. Joseph Alexander Harris, he was born 1874 died in 1939. And to the left of him, you'll see James Harris. James Henry Harris is the one that goes back to 1825. 1825, that's about 9 years before the abolition of slavery. So James Henry Harris would have been there when Jamaica still was enslaved, when their Africans in Jamaica were still enslaved. So he was a part of that plantation system from the enslavement of Africans in Jamaica. And we trace him back to, as I said, 1825. Yes, so that is the side of the Harris family that we would say is the descendants of, we saw the descendants of slave, and this part of the family were slave owners. And I think it's safe to say a lot of Jamaicans, I don't know the percentage, but could be 25 or more percentage of Jamaicans or ancestry comes from both slaves and slave owners. So that is not unique to the Harris family. With a small island like Jamaica, where Jamaica was pretty much a plantation island, and we saw the mixing of like slave masters having relations with their workers. So it's not unique to the Harris family, where we see the mixture of one side of the family were slaves and one side slave owners. So a lot of research went into this video, and I understand that people are going to say Candace Owens was just reaching, and I think to a certain extent she's reaching to get certain information, but it's crazy because all of this would not have started if not for what Janet Jackson said in that interview. And it so turned out that she was partially right, that half of Kamala Harris's family in Jamaica are white, and I think the worst part of it is that they were slave owners. So, but is this going to make a difference in the election? I don't think so. And I think what is funny about the USA and their election is that the election in America is just one of those elections where you can just grab your popcorn, grab a beer, and just sit down and just have a wonderful time, because there's a lot of drama, and it's like October madness before November election. And I know we can look forward to the October surprise. Nobody knows what it's going to be. I don't know if this is the October surprise, but yeah, so that is it. Like Kamala Harris and both sides of our family, and all of this started because, I guess, as I said, Janet Jackson, the interview with Janet Jackson, and people fascinated with the black side of Kamala's ancestry and the Jamaican side, which when I look on the media landscape in America, it's unfortunate, and I guess it's a lesson for all of us, because 99.9% of people that are reporting this in the American media have no idea about Jamaica. And in some cases, you feel like Americans have no idea of what is going on around the world, only what's going on in America. And you can see that with just people saying, oh, she's Jamaican, or dad is Jamaican. And Jamaica is an island. It's not an ethnicity. Like we have Chinese Jamaican, we have Indian Jamaican, we have Syrian Jamaican, we have Jewish Jamaican. Jamaica, out of many one people, goes back to over 150 years, when Jamaica was considered like probably one of the first melting pot in the world. And that's how the out of many one people became the Jamaica motto. So it's very interesting. But as I said, like it's fascinating. Like this, I had to do a lot of research for this video, and it is just interesting. So sound off in the comment section. Let me know what you think about what Candace Owens was doing. Do you think that she was just reaching, or do you think she was valid in what she was doing? Do you think this will have any impact at all on the election? Or do you think that this is just one of those sideshows that comes with the American election? Sound off in the comment section and let me know what you think. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. And remember, peace. I'm out.
So I expected very much for there to be a record of marriage. Oddly, as you guys will recall, any records that I did find suggested to me that Beryl may have been the domestic help, who may have also given birth to a son named Donald, born in 1938, who died before he even turned 2. So that was very strange. Question marks. We were like, okay, we're seeing this Beryl, we're seeing this Donald Harris, we're seeing that an infant died. What's really going on here? Why is it starting to feel like a scary movie? But of course, we want to rationalize it ourselves. Like maybe it is just a coincidence that another Beryl had another Donald in 1938 in St. Aaron Parish, and we shouldn't look too far into that. What we knew for certain was that Beryl, the correct Beryl, was married at the age of 25. So Donald Harris, who was presenting as Kamala's father, would have been 6 years old. She got married to a man named Lawford Newland, who he has completely erased from his childhood historical account. When he wrote this piece, he did not mention a Lawford Newland, a stepdaddy named Lawford Newland. And that was odd because then it would suggest that she would have had to have married his father, Oscar Joseph Harris, after that. So have the kid, marry someone else, and then go back and marry your baby daddy. I don't know, but I needed to find some records. We also couldn't find a divorce record, by the way, between Lawford Newland and Beryl Finnegan. Where's the divorce record? We did see that he went to America. We searched there. He went through New Orleans. We went through California. We just could not find anything. And in my view, there were too many holes in his account. Numbers that he got wrong about the siblings. I just felt that there was a secret here. So I decided that we needed more information specifically about Donald J. Harris himself. And we couldn't find a birth certificate for him, which I flagged as odd. And I also wanted to find that marriage certificate between his father, Oscar J. Harris, and his mother, Beryl Finnegan. That was crucial to me. So here's what we stumbled upon. More information about Donald J. Harris appeared to us. This is going to get crazy, you guys. I'll tell you how we put this together. Through old Jamaican newspaper clippings that had been digitized. So first and foremost, this one fact checks, but it was a little bit of tidbit of an information that I thought was interesting. It was a wedding announcement that was published in the Kingston Gleaner. That's the name of the newspaper. It was published, as you can see here, November 1st, 1963, which just announces the wedding of presumably Kamala's mother, as we're told, Shyamala Gopalin, to Donald J. Harris. It reads, he is the son of Oscar J. Harris of Spanish Town and Mrs. Beryl Finnegan. Okay. It writes before leaving, it says before leaving Jamaica in and can you pull that up? Because I couldn't read it for clarity. But it says before leaving Jamaica it looks like maybe I don't want to guess it. Mr. Harris worked for the Jamaican Information Service. Okay, what is the Jamaican Information Service? That's what I asked myself. What is that? I'll tell you what it is. The Jamaican Information Service is an executive agency of the government of Jamaica that is responsible for disseminating information. It used to be known as the Government Public Relations Office. It says that to achieve its objectives, the agency utilizes a broad range of media skill sets: print, radio, television, graphic arts, video projection, and public relations. It was established in 1956. Okay, so now we know that before he left Jamaica, he worked for the government. So he's got some connections in government. And he's not the only one, because that newspaper article goes on